the Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
Been a fan of comedy for a long time, and I've had a radio show for a long time, so I've talked to some big-time comedians. Ones like Kevin Hart and Sebastian Maniscalco, I knew when they were nothing, and they don't return my phone calls these days, but our next guest did. I saw I had his number in my phone. I figured, what the hell, I haven't talked to Steve Trevino since he hit it big, but what do you know? Gave him a quick text. Shortly thereafter, a response from America's favorite husband. Performing 2 sold-out shows at the Tampa Theater in downtown Tampa, Florida on Cinco de Mayo. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest this week on Celebrity Jobber, the very funny Steve Trevino. We first met back in, Fort Myers, Florida, probably around 15 years ago. This is before Captain Evil. This is before any kids. This was...
Yeah, we knew each other before kids and before the wife and different Steve Trevino back then.
Yeah, but still the same Steve Trevino. Even though you have a wife and you have kids, you seem like you're the same guy up on stage. You seem like you still have the same vibe.
Yeah, I try to bring the same energy. I think that's what's been lucky and unlucky for me in this business is that I've always known who I am, and who I am is not what Hollywood's looking for.
Right.
So, but it has made me very successful because I think there's a relatability about me. There's he works in his own yard kind of feel.
Right.
And that's had its advantages, and because of that, my wife and I have gone out and done our things on our own. And, man, here we are. We've already sold out 1 theater in Tampa, and we're going to add a second show there.
That's great, man. That's so great. Well, let's talk a little bit about when we met. I could tell you the last time that I saw you, you said you looked like you lost some weight, and you said to me, and I'm going through the same thing right now, but you said to me, yeah, I went to the doctors. He says I'm going to have diabetes, so I worked out. I lost a bunch of weight. Now, I just went to the doctor not too long ago, and he told me the same thing. I'm like borderline, so I'm trying to work out, lose some weight so I don't have to go on the medicine.
Yeah, well, dude, it's also one of those things like later in life, I'm like, wait a minute. I have money. I have things. I think I want to live now.
Right.
I got kids. I got a wife. Before I'm like, yeah, nobody gives a shit if I'm so sorry.
Nobody you're good.
Cares about, nobody cares if I overdose in my hotel room.
So you still down? You still lost the weight? You still doing okay?
Man, you know what? I got to the point where I lost the weight. I got to a place where I'm like, all right, I feel good. I should lose more. And now I just kind of hang out in that overweight, not obese area.
Yeah, I like to call it, I went from obese to a fat slob.
Yeah. And I have the body that when you see me, you're like, either that guy started working out or he used to work out. That's
right.
what my body is like.
Right.
In between.
Steve, let me ask you, what was your first job? Do you remember what your first job was? Outside of comedy, like maybe teenager, whatever your first paying gig was. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, 12 years old. My dad put me on a roof with my Uncle Johnny's company, and I was roofing houses, and he was one of those guys that was like general contractor. So some days I was roofing houses, some days I was boarding up abandoned buildings, and some days I was painting, and some days I was laying tile. But, yeah, 12 years old, man, doing construction. And I always say I'm such a dummy because back then I was making money with other men that were supporting families.
Right.
And I had none of that money to show for myself.
Now, do you ever think about if comedy, because let's face it, I mean, what you do is so difficult to become successful at, but you ever think about if comedy didn't work for you, if you didn't, you didn't gain success from comedy, you think you'd be back on the roof? Do you think you'd be doing something in construction?
Maybe, my wife and I do a lot of real estate, buying houses, flipping them, getting rentals, Airbnbs. We're pretty good at that. But man, I started coaching my son in Little League and in jiu-jitsu, and I'm absolutely in love with coaching, being there for those kids. Man, do they look up at you like, oh, tell me what to do, coach?
Right.
And I'm like, I'm just doing the best I can, kid. You know? But I don't know, maybe coaching or you know, flipping houses, construction. I mean, that's the great part about everything I've learned in my life. We got construction going on in my house right now, and the contractor's like, yeah, you're going to need to do this. I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't need to do that. No, you need to do this. Well, okay, how do you know? And I'm like, because I know, dude. I've been in construction.
So, Steve, born and raised in Texas. Tell me a little bit about growing up, where exactly you grew up in Texas. Tell me about your mom and your dad. What kind of jobs did they have when you were growing up?
Dad, pipe fitter, welder, Vietnam vet, tough guy. My mom worked at a children's clinic as a receptionist. I grew up cornfields, cotton fields, riding go-karts, riding one-pedal bikes, not even two-pedal bikes, one-pedal bikes. My dad would send me to the store with a handwritten note and his ID. Only guys my age and up know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Here's a handwritten note from my dad. He wants me to pick up a 12-pack of Bud Light and a pack of smokes. And then he would let me keep the change for shipping and handling. And, you got 3 quarters left over to play Galaga for an hour and a half. And now the beer's hot. Your dad's upset. He has to call the payphone at the store to get a hold of you. That's how I grew up.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
2 sisters. I do make a joke that I have a fat one, and she identifies as fat, so everybody relax. and now, we have such a great relationship. We break balls all the time, me and my sisters. And, my little sister, she's getting a little overweight. And, anytime I introduce her, I'm like, oh, it's my sister, Victoria. I have a fatter one. Like, no, this isn't the fat one. There's a bigger one.
When we first met, I think one of the most amazing reasons that the guys on our radio show loved you and thought you were really, really funny was because you told a story about when you were in high school and you dated or you had a night with Eva Longoria, and at the time, that she had a big show out, the Desperate Housewives, and you told that story. And I know Captain Evil's come into your life since that, but can you retell some of that story?
Well, no, you know what? We were on good terms, and I met her back in my hometown, and we had a great time together, and we were definitely friends, a little bit more than friends. I run into her at the Comedy Store, totally excited to see her. She was in this group called Hot Tamales, and she's at the Comedy Store performing, and I can't wait to go say hi to my friend, So I go over, I'm like, hey, what's up? And she's like, who are you? I go, who am I? I go, Steve Trevino. And she's like, yeah, I don't remember anybody from back then. And I was like, I see what's happening here. Well, someday I'm going to be on Jeff Zito's air, and I'm going to tell everybody what me and you did.
and for a little bit of the beginning of your career, it was pretty much you had a mission to tell the story on stage that you had an affair with Eva Longoria back in high school, and she pretended to not remember you years later when she became famous, and you promised to remind everyone, especially her, who you were.
Well, no, and the funny part is now, I don't care about talking about it, but as I've gotten older, I'm like, who cares? I don't worry about it anymore. But yeah, there was definitely a mission of because I was so offended. I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And then I realized, oh, she thinks less of me and doesn't want to be my friend. And dude, we were cool. And then after she did that, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go tell everybody.
But now, since then, though, you've run into each other again. Not recently, but way after that time, and you guys have made peace. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, we're cool. I see her. She says hi. I say hi. I think there's a little bit of both of us kind of growing up, but. and the best part, one time, years ago, of course, before my wife came into my life, I'm talking about it on stage, and this woman goes, "Really? Because I know her. I'll call her right now." I said, "Please do. Please do." So she calls her, and she's like, "This guy, Steve Trevino," and blah, blah, blah. She's like, "Oh, she hung up." I go, "So there you go."
Steve, tell me about college. Did you go to college, and were you trying to be a comedian? Like, when did comedy kind of enter your life?
18 years old, man. There was no college for Steve Trevino. I didn't want to go to college. I knew I wanted to be a comedian. I spent my college years I ended up on the road at 20 years old, and from 20 to started comedy at 18, got on the road by 20. I have not had a job since. And I always tell people, man, like, I spent my college years at colleges partying, but it was a different college every week because I was on the road.
Right. Wow, that's interesting.
Bro, the Tempe Improv is on campus at ASU. You don't think I was partying? I mean,
wow.
Come on.
That's a great campus too, man, isn't it?
Oh, dude, 22 years old. I'm walking into parties, hanging out, and I've always been the guy that I've never met a stranger. I could walk into a place and I'll leave fatter and drunker than everybody else, and I didn't have $1 in my pocket.
Right. So it was when you were 18 you started in comedy. Who were some of your influences that like you looked up to, that you wanted to mirror?
Man, I mean, for me as a little kid, and Jeff, you're about my age, man. I mean, Eddie Murphy was the biggest thing when I was like 8 to 12.
Yeah, Eddie Murphy, Raw, Delirious. I mean, those were some great specials.
I mean, I wore the tape out, man, and these young kids don't know. Back in the day, you had to keep a tape from Blockbuster, and then you had to put tape over the hole that they had broken off.
Right.
And then you had to have your VHS loaded in the VCR, because if something that you want on that tape comes on, you had to hit play and record. So I had one tape that was a compilation of like boobs being shown on HBO and Eddie Murphy Raw.
What's killing me about this whole thing is that I too had a compilation tape of all that stuff, and I don't know if any comedy was on there, but I definitely remember in European Vacation when Rusty was making out with the little German girl and her shirt went up. That's on the compilation tape.
Oh, dude, you knew, right? You're like, oh, next time this movie's on. One of my favorites was Just One of the Guys.
Oh, me too.
At the end, when she goes, "I'm a chick," and he's like, "No, you're not," and then she opens her shirt, and I'm like, those might be the best ones I've ever seen.
I think you're right, and I wasn't even really turned on to that girl with the short hair until the very, very end of the movie.
Yep, and
wow.
That was definitely on my compilation. What else was late night? They would do like spring break wet T-shirt contest. Yeah. I was all over it, dude. And I would hide that tape, hoping to God that my parents didn't find it.
Oh, boy, that's hilarious, man. Steve, what do you think? Obviously, it wasn't being on my radio show, but what do you think your big break was? Was it like a series of events that happened to you, or was there a stand-up special? Was it the one about your grandpa, or like, was there a particular moment that you can look back on and say, you know what, my life changed right after this happened?
Well, I mean, it was definitely kind of a progression. I'd get a little something here, a little something there, but we self-produced a special called Relatable. We got it on Netflix. I thought to myself, that's it. I'm famous. Everybody that gets on Netflix blows up. Nothing happened. So I decided to break all that up into little clips, which, by the way, had I not owned that special myself, Netflix would not have let me put these clips out. Right?
That's true.
Claimed copyright.
Right.
So because I owned it, I could do whatever I wanted. I put these clips out. And this one clip right now, as we sit, has 180 million views.
Wow.
And, dude, it was overnight, man. I called up the Brea Improv. I said, you know how you give me those Wednesdays? I go, I want one of those next week. But I don't want $200. I want a door deal. And the manager of the club goes, Trevino, you sold 38 tickets last time you were here. Are you sure you want a door deal? I go, yeah, I think I want a door deal. We sold out in 45 minutes the first show.
Wow.
Another 45 minutes, we sold out the second show, and my life has never been the same.
Wow, that's so cool. So what clip was it that got the 180 million views?
It was, two of them did amazingly well, but this one was the kind of the big one that introduced me to everybody, and it was my wife coming home from shopping. And she comes home, and I go, she wants to play The Price is Right with me when I don't care. You know, she spreads it all out, and she says, oh, my God, you know, actual retail price. What do you think I paid? And I go, look, I don't care. And she goes, $1. I paid $1. And I'm like, just tell me. And then she becomes an auctioneer. And then she's like, oh, my God, I went over to Macy's, had 10% off, another 20%. I was like, oh, my God, should I get it? I don't know if I should get it. But then this other girl wanted it. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let that bitch get it. So I went ahead and got it, and I brought it home. And it was going to be, regular price was $180. And I got this for $14. You know, and I mean, that's a kind of a synopsis of the bit. But, I mean, to this day, people ask for that bit. And it's super cool that people love it. And I have become the married guy comedian. I talk about my frustrations with my wife and dealing with marriage, and people love it, man. And it's relatable. People can feel it, touch it, and they know that I'm living a life like theirs.
So tell me, your wife, Renee, or as a lot of fans of yours know her as Captain Evil, how did she get the name Captain Evil? She seems like she's pretty cool. So a lot of wives would not really, you know, they like Sweetie and Snuggle Bear. Captain Evil's probably what a lot of wives wouldn't respond to. But how did you come up with the name? And tell us a little bit about that story.
Dude, me and my wife have such a great relationship, and part of that great relationship is that we're always giving each other hell, man. Like, she's funny, I'm funny. We're always giving each other a hard time. We take pride in giving each other a hard time. You know, we like to be funny with each other in front of people. And I had two nicknames for her. One was Honey, and it was short for the honey badger, because the honey badger is the meanest animal on the planet.
Right.
And then the other one was Captain Evil. And I used both of those, which, by the way, wasn't going to use them. And then my wife came up to me. She goes, you should say that on stage. And I go, what do you know? You're a civilian. You don't know.
What do you know?
I go on stage. I use it as kind of a throw out. I also use Honey Badger. And then all of a sudden, these people were like, hashtag Captain Evil. Oh, my God, I'm Captain Evil. I'm his Captain Evil. People have their wife under Captain Evil on their cell phone.
Oh, my God.
Dude, it's unbelievable the way this thing took off. And now we have Captain Evil shirts and Captain Evil mugs and Captain Evil hats. And people just love it. And we kind of embraced it. And, you know, I'm not one of these acts that goes, hey, don't ask me to do that.
Right.
You know, you get people like J.J. Walker, who says, don't ask me to do Dynamite. I'm like, bitch, that's the only reason I'm here.
Right. That's so.
What does it hurt you to give me a Dynamite?
That is so true. There's so many people, even bands, they don't want to play their most famous song, or, you know, nobody, you know, wanted to say, what you talking about, Willis, the little guy from Different Strokes. He didn't want to say that. And I recently talked to the announcer of The Price is Right. His name is Rich Fields. And he said the old announcer would always shut down people that say, like, hey, come on, give me a come on down, you know. And this guy's like, hey, man, I'm glad to say it. I mean, that's why I'm here. I mean, it's like, so he would have the same opinion about it as you. Like, why wouldn't you?
I remember doing a radio interview live in Chicago with Mancow, and Lawrence Fishburne was calling in, and I was so excited. And he lost it because they brought up Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Right. Oh, he lost it in a bad way? Like he got offended about it?
Oh, he got upset, and he's like, this interview is over, and if you air this, I'm going to have a problem. I mean, he lost it. And I'm like, dude, what's easier? Yeah, man, great time in my life. I love Pee-wee's Playhouse. but I'm freaking Morpheus now. Like, how hard is that?
Right, exactly.
Instead of how dare you bring that up, and it's in my notes that you can't bring it up, and it's like, whoa, dude, who are you, guy?
Yeah. Wow, that's too bad. Furious Styles has a problem with being on Pee-wee's Playhouse. Wow.
And for me, it's like you bringing up the Eva Longoria thing. For me, it's like, it happened. It was way back then. I'm not going to hide from it. I'm not going to ignore it. We just keep moving on. Right.
Yeah, I figured it probably wasn't something that you wanted to get whole deep into, having a wife and kids and stuff. Yeah. But I it's such a great story, and I definitely wanted to at least touch on it for a second. You have a podcast with Captain Evil.
Got a podcast. Found ourselves extremely bored during COVID. Found myself very depressed, not having an ability to perform. And again, man, my wife saved my life. She goes, let's go live, me and you, and let's go live every single Wednesday, and let's just talk. And that was how we were born into podcasting, because I was very against podcasting, didn't want to do it. Joe Rogan had already conquered it. Mark Maron had already conquered it. Tom Segura had already conquered it. I was late to the game, could care less about it. And then it became an outlet for my sanity because of a suggestion by my wife. And now we really enjoy arguing in front of a camera because we actually hear each other's opinions.
And it's helping your brand. And even though Joe Rogan and Tom Segura and guys like that have, killed it, and they're the king of the mountain, still guys like us, we can catch the spare change that falls off the mountain, and it adds up to be pretty good.
Well, and not only that, man, I realized, it took a long time for me to figure it out, but Joe Rogan's not my competition.
No.
Tom Segura is not my competition. However, I find it very interesting that, all these people are now including their wives in their podcasts.
Right. Right.
I was including my wife in my social media, in my life, in my stand-up, in my podcast. Other guys wouldn't even mention their wife. And now I see it all the time where, let me introduce you to my wife. And, hey, here's a social media post with me and my wife. And I'm like, well, that's cool, but they're still not my competitor. And if I can make 10 people enjoy it every week, that makes me happy. I'm good.
It's
and there's not 10 people. I mean, we're doing surprisingly really, really well.
You're doing extremely well. I can tell you that much. Tell me what's next for you. What do you see yourself doing 5 years from now? Would it be movies, or does that interest you at all, or a sitcom, or
retired?
Really?
I want to make as much money as I can, and I want to be home with my kids every single day if I can, and tour very, very little, just to go get the itch. If I end up in a movie, great. If I get a TV show, great. But I'm trying to save my money, trying to be responsible so that, by the time my son gets into junior high, I can be there at that baseball game. I can be there on the weekends with him at least half the year. So my goal is to get to a place where I'm doing theaters, maybe arenas. I make a crap ton of money in 6 months, and then the other 6 months, I'm home.
I mean, it looks to me, just following you on social media, that your whole family tours with you as you're doing comedy all over the country.
Dude, it's like a circus act, man. My wife comes on stage afterwards, and we take questions. My son opens the show by singing God Bless the USA. My daughter comes out and waves to the audience and bows. It is like, we're like the Flying Melendezes or whatever. It's the whole circus, man. And people, they love it because they see the real people.
Right.
They realize that I'm telling real stories about real people, and here they are.
This guy is a real person. Again, I'm telling you, I met Steve maybe 15 years ago, identified that he was very funny. He's blown up in the past 5 years, or maybe even less than 5 years, but is blown up to a point where he should not be answering my calls or text messages, and he did. So that just goes and shows you what, a real kind of guy that you are.
I appreciate it, but I did still say, hey, dude, reach out to my assistant, which that part has changed. However, I will never, ever. And the way I look at it, Jeff, dude, you were so kind to me to share the air with me, to try to help me sell tickets when I had nothing. And the way I look at it is, hey, man, you were the bigger act in that town than I was, and you were helping me. So for me, it's like, hey, I owe you this phone call.
Oh, that's very cool. So do you think if it wasn't for comedy, Steve Trevino would have been in the construction business, like on a roof in his uncle's construction business? Maybe. But I could tell you one thing. The guy was funny from the get-go, and funny is funny. We knew this guy was going to make it. Not quite as big as he's made it, but I think we kind of knew. He's on the road nonstop from now until the beginning of December. Go to stevetrevino.com to find out where he'll be performing near you. Once again, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. It's the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. We'll see you next week. I'm Jeff Zito.